question loud enough, and I don't know who to
Okay.
answer it. I'm just curious.
I can repeat it.
What might be typical, maybe there isn't typical, of the number of people who should be, forgetting this new law or anything, eligible to vote in Kansas? What kind of turnout do we get, basically? Do we get like 20% of the people turning out, say, in November election? Do we get 87% of the people turning out? What?
Okay, the question is
You can
about
answer that.
what kind of percentage turnout do we get in Kansas and maybe
In
in
Sedgwick
Sedgwick
County.
County? Do you have Kansas information?
Move to the line.
Sedgwick County.
Sedgwick County.
Sedgwick County, okay.
Actually, I didn't bring those figures with me today. Those are all available on our website. If you look at the election results, you can see what the percentage turnouts were in each type of election. I do know that our local elections in the spring tend to be a lower turnout than the fall elections. I know last spring we had a pretty small turnout for our primary, but I think that had something to do with the snow we had on the ground at the time.
I just have an observation on these two forms, the English and the Spanish form that you guys have. It seems that you have to rewrite it because it's wrong, what it says here. Based on what you mentioned earlier, I know you know what you didn't write this law, but based on what you say earlier, that the people that is not a citizen of the United States by birth, by naturalization, needs to bring you the paper to your office to show it. So based on that, these two forms are wrong.
I am aware that the
You know,
directions
so
on
these
the
two
form
forms,
are
they don't
different.
work.
Yes.
You know, you probably need to reprint it. I mean, that's just a suggestion.
That form is actually supplied to us by the Kansas Secretary of State. It's not printed by our office.
Yeah, but
We don't
they
have
both say
control over
or the number.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's just an observation, you know, I mean,
And
I'm
I'd
not
be-
for or against, I'm just saying what it say here.
that. And I would be happy to pass that on,
Yes.
on to the election commissioner and to the Secretary of State for you.
Thank you.
Question on, and this is primarily to Sandy. You said that birth certificate, but if the birth certificate does not match the name, for example, all of the married women in my generation who took our husbands' names, we then have to get a copy of our marriage document too?
You can give us a copy of your marriage document, or you can fill out that one-page affidavit that has your name and just say that the reason your name differs is because you got married.
The driver's license people won't let you do things without proof. And some of the old driver's license, some of the Social Security people didn't get the marriage properly recorded, even though they sent out a card with your new name.
My question was more that, so we've got about half of the voters in Kansas that are women, and a great portion of those certainly that have taken a husband's name that are having to have a separate document. And isn't that, and that comes back to what you were saying, Mr. Brunk, isn't that discrimination against a class, against women?
Yeah, you know, I'm not sure that I'm not a lawyer. I'm not sure it meets a legal test of discrimination. I think it's certainly another barrier. I mean, sort of aside from legal criticisms of what has happened as a result of the SAFE Act, there's another aspect of this which I think is partly touches on what you're saying, or what you're saying is part of the picture, and that is that it's just become a lot more complicated to figure out what you need to do in Kansas to be able to register and vote. I mean, at one point, we made this kind of attempt at doing a flow chart of the process, and we decided that it really couldn't be called a flow chart. It should be called the Kansas voting maze, and I wish I had remembered to bring it because, you know, there's all these places where it's sort of like you stop, you go, and you stop, you go, and you stop. And it's not always clear what the next steps need to be. And so part of, I think, what's happened is, I mean, I said in my presentation, it used to be pretty simple. Now it's pretty complicated. And when you make things complicated, you're going to dissuade some people from doing what they need to be able to vote.
We had a question.
Yes, if you completed the federal registration form and it was turned into your office, are you calling the people to come in and to provide pictured ID?
Birth certificate.
Not a picture ID.
I mean,
If
a
they are required to show proof of citizenship in order to be registered in Kansas, they are being contacted.
So will they be able to vote in the state elections?
Right now, we are waiting for direction from the Kansas Secretary of
So we
State's
don't know
office.
whether it's going to be tiered, we're waiting.
Wow,
Okay.
switch.
The other question,
As he mentioned, there is, pending court case on that, so I'm really not able to comment on what that would be. I believe it will be dependent on the outcome of the court case. And then we will, like I said, await direction from the Kansas Secretary of State.
and the other question for a college student that has registered here in Kansas, and they go away to school, they need to do what?
If their home of record and their legal residence is still here in Kansas, they can fill out one of those green forms and request to get a ballot by mail. And we are more than happy to send them a ballot to allow them to vote by mail.
Okay, if they forget to do that before they leave, is there a site they can go to?
Yes, that's available on our website. It is also available by calling our office, and we'll be happy to email that to them or send them a hard copy.
Thank you.
Can I say this? What you guys described, how these new laws are affecting people, especially suppressing, to me, it's kind of to silence the voters, to make sure they don't come out and vote. So I fit in the category of all. I'm a woman, I'm black, I'm a Democrat, but I also serve as a state legislator on the Ethics and Elections Committee. I remember Ernestine Crable and I, we tag team, we did very well to stall and allow you to get to the committee to testify, and we were able to make an impact on the implementation of the citizenship requirement until 2013. This year, I introduced legislation, the protection against voter suppression, to address those. At the time, it was about 20,000 people that were on the suspended list in limbo. I know, my question is regarding to provisional voting. For myself, I requested a birth certificate, the little card, laminated card to put in my wallet. It came back to me and listed me as a male. So for those first-time voters, like the 18-year-olds who may say, forget it, I'm not gonna, get back with you, I'm going on to college, and therefore they don't show their birth certificate. But if they show up again at the poll to vote, thinking they are registered, would you just share with us what's gonna happen in regards to them, the provisional process?
Yes, if they have not completed their registration application if it's a proof of citizenship document that's required, as I mentioned, it can be shown up until 11:59 p.m. the night prior to the election, and that can be faxed or emailed in, after business hours. But if someone shows up who has their registration as incomplete, their name would not appear in the poll book. Name would also not appear in the poll book if they were in the wrong polling place, or if they simply had never registered to vote. They would be asked to vote provisionally. They would fill out a voter registration card, be given a provisional ballot envelope, as well as a voter ID slip, which would give them instructions on what a provisional ballot is and how to contact our office should they wish to know whether their provisional ballot was counted by the county canvass.
And they could bring their birth certificate at that time?
In order for a proof of citizenship document only, that has to be provided by 11:59 p.m. the night before the election. If they lack voter ID at the polls, that can be provided up until the time of canvassing.
Well, and I just have to share this with everybody. So Chris, Secretary of State, Chris Kobach, was in our committee. And since we didn't get a hearing to address those suspended voters, I actually made the suggestion that he do the cross-reference with the Vital Statistics Office to help reduce that number. And so he is doing that in-house policy. But
Yes,
it
and we
won't-
have been receiving those on a monthly
But it won't
basis.
affect those who don't live here or that
Who
weren't born in
Kansas,
Kansas.
yes.
So
Yes, we have been getting the list from the Secretary of State's office of both the marriage documents and the proof of citizenship documents, birth certificates for Kansas applicants.
Yes, sir, in the back.
I guess I'm confused. You made a statement that if a woman had got a divorce or changed her name, that all they have to do is sign an affidavit?
They can either provide a copy of the document, such as a marriage certificate or divorce decree, or they can choose to just sign the affidavit.
But doesn't
And
the
did you say-
affidavit have to go to the Secretary of State's little committee?
Didn't you?
No, that's just provided to our office.
But didn't you have a bill that co-sponsored bill that all you had to do was sign the affidavit?
yeah. Well, I just have to say this, and everybody already knows, and you're right, that the bill that was introduced by myself and Representative Jim Ward in the Senate and in the House on the first day of the 2014 legislative session, that's what that bill would have done. But we purposely didn't get a hearing, and I've been working with ACLU, Holly, and they want us in this position. They don't want people to have their right to vote. So we didn't get a hearing because they don't want to address the issue, but you're right,
You can
Pastor.
sign an affidavit on here, but they didn't want it.
Exactly. See,
Well,
it's
just
unfair.
like the misleading things there are on the voter registration that is coming directly from the Secretary of State's office. I mean, he is misleading the public into believing that they send a number and they'll register, and then they get to them and there is a letter sent, no, you need proof of citizenship. And while all this craziness happens, by the time elections come, and it's over.
Betty, did you have
Well,
a last
the
question?
voter registration card used to be an affidavit of truth. And by what he has done with the SAFE Act, or what we have done with the SAFE Act, is moving civil rights backwards, not forwards, and certainly not making it easier to vote. And I just... Raises my blood pressure.
Okay, it's,
Mr. Babish?
yes?
I'm sorry, I know that he's not gonna ask his question, but Mr. James Crowder standing there, he used to work at the polls, and here's his question. If an individual goes in to vote and they can't read very well, is a poll worker allowed to assist them and read the screen for them?
Yes, 2 poll workers must assist them, not 1. And then they have to keep a record of that assistance that was rendered, so they need the name of the voter and the name of 2 poll workers who assisted that voter.
But the question is, the guy, the voter did not ask for assistance. He asked me, could he pull out a paper? He was instructed by some people that he had a list, tell them who to vote for. And he asked me, could he pull the paper out? And
Yes.
I was accused of voting for this person.
The voter can have a piece of paper
I
with
know
notes
that.
on it,
I
as
know
long
that,
as,
and I told him that.
and if the board worker is assisting them, they have to have 2 board workers
I didn't
assisting that
assist him.
voter.
He asked me a question,
Mhm.
and I was accused of voting for this person.
Okay.
And I'm sure you're familiar with that, because you told me I was under investigation.
Because that is a personnel matter, I'm not able to
Yeah, I
discuss particulars of the situation. Unless you would like to sign a document releasing that information. Yes.
I have another question, this is for the man from the ACLU. If, as this gentleman pointed out, and it's been said that the women who change their name can, can verify that they're the same person that their other document shows they are by a simple affidavit, but nobody else can use an affidavit for any other purpose. Isn't that an equal protection issue?
You know, that's an interesting question. I hadn't thought about that. I'm going to ask our legal director about that. I mean, it seems like there's a double standard being used there.
Yeah, of course.
We have to end there because our official time here at the library is over at 1 o'clock, but perhaps if Sandy and Gary aren't in a big hurry, or one of the other aren't, they might be available for a couple minutes after.